never published. And he made up what he could at the time. So is it objective or is it just his personal research? Is this his personal research? Some of it, there's some stuff that he did do, like on the brain stuff and the eyes and all that stuff's published. But that's not really pertains to athletics in general. That's more of just an athletic thing back in the early 90s.
Would it ever be valuable to like somehow track where the player is looking through the swing? Is there anything on the market like that? Do you think that would be something that would be interesting to kind of study, or no?
Yeah, I think so.
There's actually a mental coach that was doing something with that at Grand Cypress in Orlando. He was I think he did something with the University of Florida, but he had these glasses that actually picked up where your
I think that would be interesting.
Was looking, could actually track where you were, your perceptive was looking at the ball. So I don't know anything about it though, but
it's there.
I always thought that would be interesting.
Yeah, they have eye-line golf that kind of forces you to look through the certain peering. But I do know some guys. I know one guy who like looks over here before he swings.
Yeah.
His name was Dr. Ryan Caserta. Ryan Caserta. Yeah.
It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Downswing, early transition. So early transition or change of direction, and we're just going to skim through this. We're going to go over this tomorrow at depth. Okay, that's why because that's a lot of information to give you. And we're doing this because you can see the time we have for 30 minutes. So I'm basically going to cover nutshell, your ground force, rotation, verticals, based off forces and torques. So in early transition, we want to look at the couple. Okay, we'll start with the hands. And the force that's inside the hands between the grip, so it's the midpoint on the grip, midpoint on the grip. There's midpoint grip, midpoint shaft, and center mass and sweep spot. So this is the beautiful part about this. This is where you get into the kinetics of the swing. So the kinetics of the swing is not position orientation, it's not theoretical. Okay, it's just mapping it. So it's the accumulation of the forces that create the kinetics of the swing, which in golf makes a lot of sense because you're looking at the total motion, okay, or the dynamic of it. So at the top, application of force, or the net force that's applied, how it's applied influences how the force into the club is used. Okay, so if we understand, and there's plenty of information out there, I'm covering it like this, and then I'll get into my preference. Okay, so what you're going to notice is with most of my players, there's an equal looking outward and downward force applied on them. Looking. Okay. And we need to understand why. Okay? So from the top, there is an outward force applied by the rotation of the body. Okay? We know that. That doesn't mean the hands actually move out. Okay? Because the net force is the direction of force, not the actual movement of the handle itself. And that is not debatable. That's just the way it is. That's just where it is. Because that net force, okay, if applied downward, will have the appearance of the hands going down. However, there are players that have been measured, because it's out there. It's when the net force is going out, it may look that the hands stayed in, and it equally went down. And why is that? Because of the right couple and the alpha torque. Rory Mcilroy. Okay. So players that have, let's say, this thing back, and they have the outward force of rotation. Rory has a ton of it, right? But he has so much outward pushing out on that right-hand couple, that mass of the club pulls back the lead arm against the chest. and has the appearance that the lead arm stayed in. And this is where this discussion goes into, the guys start looking from this theoretical, the direction the hands are going, on 2D. It's like, what are you doing that for? It doesn't matter. It's a good relationship, it's a good way to peg it, and you'll see this tomorrow. I have 3 different pictures to show you. And you can tell me which one has the most outward force, and you're gonna get it wrong. Okay, it's actually Rory. Has the most face-seeking, earliest of anybody on there, probably measured. Except for the guy's already set it there, which would be John Rahman. He's already set there. But he goes from extension, just so you understand this, he's going from extension there more than anybody, right? And the hands haven't moved. But they have appearance that they stay back. Something to look at. It's a freaky thing. So what we understand is we want to have those forces applied in such a way. So what does that mean? How did that force get applied? Rotation. Okay? And this is where golf instruction gets kind of crazy, because everybody interprets the downswing differently. Okay? And I'm pretty liberal and go into many different directions when it comes to the early transition, because I've seen it a lot. Because I've seen guys like Rory, and I've seen guys like John Rahm, and Dustin, and they all do it differently. And to me, I have a preference, because I want to balance out those torques to stabilize the face. Okay? So let's just kind of look at it this way. So a player that goes vertical early, hand path goes vertically down, okay, we know is going to seep in the shaft at the bottom, right? They're gonna pull up on the grip hard and try to line that up. William McIlroy, right? So we know he's going to do that. Phil Mickelson, okay, we know he's going to do that. Some guys do it better than others, okay? Now, luckily in William's case, he had a shut left wrist, and Bose, when he did it, he was fine. He had a 7-iron with a 63-degree vertical swing playing and hitting the ball. Okay. But then you look at a Webb Simpson, and we've seen this all over the internet. Open, pull down, slice, right? Tilt back, chase it. But in that regard, there are not a lot of guys who have actual hand path that can draw the ball with a lead arm that's actually out at P5. And why is that? So what do you think happened?
You mean out, you mean this one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where's that all coming from? So remember, I have a preference that the shaft has a little bit of number 3 at the top, not a lot, it's not super crossed. So where's the center of mass right now? The balance point of the club. So anytime I say center of mass is the balance point, okay? We're just going to say square sweet spot. We're not going to take that into account, okay? So in order for me to make this effective, I have to employ a very large moment arm to kick that back, okay? Now, what else has to happen in order for me to lower this head? Well, I just got to keep rotating, right? It's got to keep rotating. Then it's got to kick back this way. Do I have to get it more under that way or less? So what's the difference? I don't know if you guys are following that. So here this is in line, okay, and I add directional force of rotation of the bottom. Shaft laid down, no problem, right? Because I put the direction of the center of mass in line to the force vector, okay? That's what I did. And as I rotated that, lowered down pretty quick, which is great for a dragger. Handle draggers, if you want to do that, okay? But I have a little bit of differential, or a lot, and then I do crazy net force outward to lower. Did the shaft work further under or stay the same? Way more. So if you're reading Sasha stuff, that much shallowing in the moment of transition is going to have manual at the bottom. It's not passive. So that's why I want to be careful with really crossing and really laying down. You do have to apply manual at the bottom. Okay? I'm throwing it out there right off the get-go, so we have understanding. So the difference between inline and massively crossed. Okay? Carl Peterson. Massively crossed, massively laid down. Okay? Through the ball, stays back the longest. Uses more side to side. If you watch him, he kind of rocks. Okay. When I worked with Carl, it was actually baseline shifting. So for him to hit his driver, it was aimed at the right. Because he worked with somebody, he said, "What are you doing, Carl? You're aiming way right." I don't know, Carl, I've seen you hit balls before, you always aim right. And then all of a sudden you lose your card. You're trying to aim straight all day long. And then when you hit short iron, you take left. It was like, done, and that was it. There was no swing stuff or anything like that. It's sensitivity on that, but just face to pass stuff. Okay, so anyway, did that make sense about the reasonable? Because you won't see a lot of guys go goofy that way. You might see one or two, not many. It's pretty much just a little bit. Okay, now that being said, we understand where the center of mass goes relative to the net force, right? So if the net force going out, that affects the mass kicking back and the beta torque. Okay, we'll get into that tomorrow. That's going this way, right? Now, what does the next force being applied? What else is being applied? We have the coupling of the right hand force, which is this way. What does the left hand do? Ulnar and pull up, right? So this is an interesting thing, okay? And this is, you might have a difficult time writing this down. So pulling up on the grip is basically pulling up on the circle, essentially. What is that doing to the golf club itself? Speeding it up. Yeah. So that's the force on the couple. Okay. So we understand that. Okay. So if you're always working on punch shots, uncocked, it's fine. No, that's fine. Not gonna hit it very far. Okay. What you should be doing is working on releasing the golf club with the right coupling. Okay. So when I pull up on the grip, and I'm going like this, I'm pulling up. The lead shoulder is actually, and this is my vocabulary, lead shoulder is working up and back, away from me, and the scapula is retracting behind my body. Okay? And when that happens, you'll actually see this with Dawn. I purposely put certain individuals in for some of this stuff. When you do that, and you have that upward force on the handle, the left wrist seeks extension faster. Now you might say, not you guys, but most people would say that's a problem. Not if you're open. Because you're going to have forward shaft lean anyway. Okay? It's how fast you can get rid of it to increase the club head speed. Now remember, okay, we bypass P6 in this regard. Okay? And this will help you. Okay? If I create an off-plane motion from the top, and this could be slight, okay? Force on the shaft goes this way, the net force is here, center mass is kicking out and trailing me, trailing the body, it's way back, 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 okay? And I say that all day long. Just trail this thing. The lead wrist is seeking flexion. I have to get that into extension, okay? So the net force of up, pulling up and around with my scapula and my pivot, pulling out of the ground, throws this flexion wrist into an extension wrist. Speeds the club up. Okay? That's basically the terminology I use. I don't make it any more difficult than that. Okay? I really don't. I don't want guys to get stuck with position orientation on this stuff because it gets really debatable, and it's like you live in a glass house when that happens because guys can just throw examples at it. But if you go at just for what it's worth, how the force is being applied, you have variables. You know, this variable. I mean, you have Jason Day as an example relative to Ricky Fowler. Ricky does a different way of beta torque to gamma. His goes this way and this way now. Now, I have preference to his old move, where he went the other way, but he seems to be okay for now.
So what is your, can you go through your preference?
Yeah, so my preference from
in the
4 to
transition?
5, yeah, my 4 to 5 essentially, zero model is you get to the top and the first movement pattern is as the center mass kicks back, the trail arm goes into, and this is where we're going to get into a lot tomorrow, the trail arm goes into external rotation or increases external rotation. Let me get to the left arm in a minute. Right wrist stays bent. Center mass is trailing my body, and then at that point, you measure P5, the hip should be square. As you do this, relative to the width of the shaft in the transition, so if you're this way, or this way, or this way, your side bend will follow suit. Okay, so guys that side bend too much have too much lag. We talked about that. So then they can't rotate. So if you get narrow, probably not going to rotate.
Shouldn't rotate.
Shouldn't rotate.
Shouldn't rotate.
Yeah, if you're in that condition. So if you're in this condition, you will. Or you miss the ball. So that's in the transition on the right arm, the chest, the shoulder plane, the rotation. Now, the left arm, okay, is, remember it was on the chest, remember I said this is going to be important? It's going to stretch against the chest, okay, as you move. So it's going to stay pinned. It is not going to fire down.
And then before?
That is passive. Be careful of that. Because if it does fire down, you got radial for too long. Okay? Guys that tend to try to fire their handle down can't release the couple either. And they also stall. Well, or that. Yeah, so you, the firing the left arm off the chest basically can push the handle too far forward. And what do you think happens if the handle gets too far forward? Massive side bend. Push cut. Yeah, that was kind of an interesting scenario because there is no such thing as accumulators. It's really not. It's a golf machine term. It's kind of interesting to me. I think the part that is pertinent is the pressure points in the hands. I think those do make sense as examples. I don't have the actual data on that stuff because you can't really measure it at this point, like how much pressure is applied when. I get kind of a sense of it, but in order to lower the head to the ball, you don't need to fire your left arm off your chest. In fact, that slows you down. I did that for a while. Now, the only pattern you would actually do that is in CP. Only pattern, because you're trying to get this to negative loft and low cut. It's actually Daniel does that. Like he's the only reason why I let him do it is how good his arms are. It's freaky. He gets here and can go. Like, okay, I can't do that. Mac can do it. I've seen Mac do it. I can't do that. And actually effectively hit a ball at a really high level. He brings them in like.
So is there any reference from down the line, like where the hand should be moving?
Yeah, they should be moving equally down and out. Yeah. Not physically actually out.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. And though Chris would say otherwise, but he has Jamie Lovemark who actually does move the hands out and then he tilts. So if you move the hands actually out, you're going to start tilting. Just is. And there's another teacher here in Southern California that says to do that. It's fine. It's going to be a lot of shallowing to do that. And if you do that,
You know, that's a lot of third too.
oh yeah. So it's an interesting thing. So we want to just kind of understand zero before we go off. Zero else. Yeah, because then we're getting into a specific pattern, and I don't want to do that. what are some other things that happen in early transition when we apply couple to it? What's another torque? So we remember we had this torque, and then we have this torque. The club twists about itself. Okay. So what you're going to see also in that regard is if you're a high skilled player, you're going to see that player go from Ben Hogan extension. I mean, Hogan did it, for goodness sake. Whenever that subject matter comes up, they never post a picture of Ben. He did okay. And he had a weak grip. So he went. Now, would he have had, probably, but he had manufactured equipment that did things and extra spike and whatever. Maybe it was just chain smoking, I don't know. But whatever it was, you know, he went from here to here really fast. So he had big rotational force to do that. He also didn't get it crossed. He was shorter, more here. And from this, he went that way pretty fast. Even though he said it was supination, actually.
And so for someone who's flat at the top,
That's fine.
Then what do you recommend?
Increase into palmar flexion slide. Generally. By and large. So what causes that to happen is the movement of the left shoulder from the ground. Good. So when I have ground force reaction, that moves that couple, the outward force is applied. The outward force applied is what throws the left wrist into flexion, which gets the face to square early on the arc. Earlier that happens, the better, essentially, typically.
Can you go over that again from the left shoulder?
Yeah. So P4, 4 to 5, early transition. So in the early transition, when you start changing directions, now we're not changing the shoulder pitch, right? This is staying the same. The ground force is causing rotation. The lead shoulder starts to move back up and away this way, gradually. That force applied, remember the center of mass is back behind the hand path itself, keeps the left wrist going into flexion as that happens. That's one of the torques applied. So if you tell a guy to stay closed, to hit a ball, we're never going to draw it. Ever. If they do, it'll be a pull draw. Start aiming right. Any questions on that? Do we have understanding of that? Okay.
Can you just touch one more time on like you said, the torque was one was the kind of the uncocking, right?
Yeah, so the first torque you want to look for in early transition, there's actually both, is you're going to, first move is going to be the flattening of the shaft and the squaring of the face. So the first is going this way, this way. The more of that happens, the more the body opens. Okay, that's why, and then the last one is the club kicking out. You'll never, ever, ever, ever see anybody who is stuck or over-rotated at impact if we have understanding. And I think this group understands that. You will see somebody get stuck if they've translated their shoulders in the transition or don't have the proper sequencing of understanding their side bends. They will be stuck. Okay? So guys that tend to tilt back and swing too far right are stuck. Or they spin their hips and tilt back like that, and they're stuck. But if they have the right segments working, they're not stuck. I mean, David Duvall is the most stuck player there is. Jim Furyk. And the reason why I'm doing it, because of the lack of time, and you guys get an overview of this stuff, is that and I keep hitting home on the being reasonable, because we can't ever, you don't want to put yourself in a position you're never open for discussion. And that's a really big thing here. There's going to be a time and a place, and I've told this to numerous coaches, is that the industry always, do you guys know Riley at all in Oklahoma? Have you guys seen him hit a ball? Like 210 ball speed, like just big, tall kid. I think he got beat by Wyndham Clark last year in NCAAs. The kid's a freshman, so he's going to be the real deal. He's the next Dustin Johnson. Like, he makes Cameron Champ look slow, right? So he's got 5 or 6 miles per hour more on Cameron with better metrics. Cameron launches at 6, and Riley's at 8, 9. And so if that's where the tour is going on the outlier side of the spectrum, what are you going to do for 110? Like, are we going to just go wacky with stuff going everywhere? Or are we going to be, who's the next Zach Johnson? You know what I mean? That's where we want to kind of, because you're going to have those kids come to you. You know, Patrick Cantley's a good example. He's an outlier on the putting green. I mean, if you've ever seen him putt, he's like Brad Faxon on the putting green. Hits it everywhere. And he's a good kid. Like, I like the kid. He's a good kid. And he's probably going to hit it better, because I know he has back issues, so he doesn't get to hit a lot of balls. But you know, those are the discussions that need to be had. It's not the next Dustin Johnson. I mean, because those guys are fine. They're going to hit far anyway. It's the guys that are underneath that you want to kind of go, okay, how do I get that kid competitive against that kid? You know, so get him as much speed as you can. If we're already there, let's get a better pattern. So, make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have those 3 forces. Those are the overview things. Now the alignment of this. Okay, so and you'll see this tomorrow on the lead arm. There's different ways to skin this cat as far as the hand path, where it is in relationship. And you get a generalization that generally if the lead arm is at 0 at P5, it's going to be close to being more manual force applied on the right arm itself. Okay, that's why I have a preference where, if you guys look at this, okay, and this is just to argue a point. I'm going to bring up 2 different examples. And I get it that one's a driver and one's not. I think these guys are the 2 of the most rotated individuals in the planet. This was on Instagram, so I just took it off. And then this one is probably one of my favorite swings of all time, because around this time I watched him hit a ball. Okay, have you guys come over here for a second? So here is Rory Mcilroy when he was leading the Masters and lapping the field. Okay, now I get it, it's not Tiger Woods' backswing where it was crossed and wide and all that kind of stuff. And Tiger was different. Tiger was here, high, wide, crossed, and more like that, right? I get all that. Here's David. So let's put a line. What kind of ball flight did David hit? Typically. What was his shot shape? His shot shape was draw back in the day.
Was it? I think that's. I mean,
He's
trying to get back to that, right? Right.
I hope so. Yeah, he flushed it.
Yeah.
So my roommate played with him in '96 in the LA Open. It was low cut. Striped it though. So where's the directional force? Did his hands come out? Say almost equal, maybe? Maybe slightly. So the net force is still present though. There's still an outward force applied in order for the center mass to fall down. Did he rotate? Is his left arm on his chest? Absolutely. Right? So it's there. That's his P5. Now, Rory, now this is different than what he's doing now. See where the center mass is inside the ball? He's more out now. Hand path more behind the right shoulder. Right? Now, watch this. And this is where we have to be reasonable. Because you have a lot of hip tilt. No. A little more hip turn, then he lowers. Lead arm stays, is it on the chest?